Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Swipe up 170. This is the show where I give my opinion on current events, whether you like it or not. This is how I feel. These are the words coming out of my mouth. And if you disagree with it, feel free to be one of the many people to do so in the comments. And if you're rude, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if you get blocked. Don't get all emotional. Don't do it. Don't get emotional if I unfollow you. Don't get emotional if I block you. It's nothing personal, but it's probably something personal. But let's get into it, shall we, with Swipe Up, the 170th episode of this crazy little show that I shouldn't be doing, but it's probably going to get me into trouble in some ways. Starting off with tsunami warning. There was a tsunami advisory issued for the U.S. West Coast and Alaska. It was a volcanic eruption in the Tonga Island, in the Tonga's area. And kind of crazy, the footage. There was some like satellite footage of it. It looks like a bomb went off, but it's a volcano. According to sources, I'm sure there's plenty of conspiracy theory nuts out there that think it's all kinds of other things. All kinds of, it's the lizard people are doing their tests, their genetic tests, and in trying to make a Hulk person, they exploded the ocean. Because that's where their secret base is in Tonga, which we all should know that. But yeah, tsunami warning. From what I've seen, the tsunami, not like from what I've seen as far as when it hit landfall on the West Coast, it wasn't as bad as like when Japan got their tsunami or other places where it really just kind of erases the land. It just kind of looked like a really high tide in areas. And it didn't seem like there was a lot of damage, which is good. I would imagine it wouldn't take much more to make that a much more serious thing, especially like, you think of like the houses that are in like L.A. that are on like the cliffs that like look over the ocean, where it's just like, a little bit more erosion and all of those multi-million-dollar homes just fall right into the Pacific. I would imagine a tsunami, like a larger tsunami, would probably kind of accelerate that erosion that's happening. But thankfully, I didn't see anything too tragic from this event. Crazy to hear about it. Not that crazy weather happenings are out of trend. It seems to be the most trendy thing to happen the past few years is for just insane weather to be befalling our planet because of, global warming, climate change, giant corporations just destroying the planet for profit and continuing to do so. So, it's not that crazy, but also, It's on a long line of just crazy things that are happening, I guess. But let's move on. Hopefully everybody's safe. I don't know how it affected, Hawaii. Anyway, I didn't hear any. I haven't heard any horror stories. Haven't seen any videos that really would make me like concerned, like when the tsunami hit a few years ago in Japan. I think it was Japan, right? Maybe it was somewhere else. I could be getting that completely wrong. And with that, because maybe I am wrong, let's move on. The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out, browse the entire collection, and when you decide on a piece or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED
when you check out, and you'll save 10% as a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show.
Let's move on to some good news, I guess. I mean, it's just another... It's not good news, but it's good to see these students hold walkout protests over in-person learning during COVID surge. Students in Boston and Chicago walked out of their classes on Friday in protest, which is probably 2 Fridays ago, in protest of in-person learning as COVID-19, the Omicron, for those who want a timestamp of what version of COVID we're in. Delta is long gone. Well, not really. Delta's still around, but Omicron is the big spike. So as those cases continue to rise, it really feels like from the CDC okaying people to only be out in quarantine out of 5 days instead of 10, which is something requested by Delta Airlines. It really feels like all of the quote-unquote health recommendations that have been being passed down are only to make sure businesses stay open. Like, at no point are any of these rules or mandates or recommendations done so with the hope and the premise of keeping human beings safe. Despite being vaccinated and boosted, people can still get COVID despite those things. They will have a much easier time of it than somebody who is unvaccinated, but it's still able to infect people who are vaccinated and thus spread, thus evolve. And this thing continues to be allowed to evolve all of these different ways, becoming far more contagious. I believe Omicron is like 5 times more contagious than the original COVID strand, I believe. So to see students who shouldn't be in school, even though they're vaccinated, they're going to get, teachers are going to get sick, students are going to get sick, and it's only to keep schools open as like daycare facilities because the parents have to go to work. Like, hospitals are forcing doctors and nurses to work despite testing positive for COVID. It is insanity. All kinds of businesses are slowing down because so many people are getting sick because nothing is being done. It is being labeled as a pandemic for the unvaccinated, despite the fact vaccinated people are still getting it. It's just people aren't dying in that group. But nobody's allowed to get healthy. Nobody's allowed to actually get well and prevent this thing from spreading. It just seems to be let it spread. And these kids are tired of it. They see the bullshit. Right? There's dumb kids out there for sure, probably raised by dumb parents who don't believe in it, think it's some conspiracy. They use Joe Rogan's advice as like some like magical doctor's advice instead of him just like being a propaganda pusher because it suits his narrative. It suits his bottom line as somebody who owns a supplement company to keep putting out the information that all you need to do is have a healthy immune system. Unless your name is Joe Rogan, in which case, when Joe Rogan gets sick, he doesn't just let his immune system take over. He throws the entire kitchen sink at it because he's a multimillionaire who can afford private doctors, all of the medicine. There is no price too high for the health and well-being of Joe Rogan. However, the listeners of Joe Rogan are given a coupon code to get a Onnit supplement. So I'm glad these kids are trying to make a difference. I feel bad for their generation because they are living in a world where like so many adults, including people of power, like politicians, business owners, tons of like news networks, they're all pushing this like delusional propaganda narrative, just and just constantly begging for money. Constantly begging for money as their legal bills pile up. And then we have kids trying to make a difference, trying to do what's right. And yeah, I don't think kids should be in school right now. We can do the in-home stuff. I understand it's tough. The government should step in. It's like, okay, we're going to give stimulus checks out to people. We did this before. When this whole thing started, everything worked from, like, people were able to do the thing. And now it's like, no, the economy, property and profit are the only things valued in this country are profit and property. Humans, expendable. There's so many of them. Just let them die. Let them all be homeless, and then we'll give them nowhere to live if they're homeless. We'll make sure every bit of land and space is inhabitable for human beings to lay down. And eventually they'll just die. It's not like they'll, get desperate and commit a crime, and we'll get them in our slavery prisons, our private prisons. It's just disgusting. And it's sad how disgusting it is, the fact that we are exponentially in better hands than when Trump was president, but like barely. Like Biden isn't like incessantly annoying on Twitter or anything like that. He also just doesn't seem to be doing anything. Like nothing happens. Nothing. It's not just Biden. It's all of the Republican Party, and then a bunch of moderate Democrats that are just digging their heels in because they want to get another paycheck from their big business buyout people. Anyway, good on the kids. Walk out. There needs to be more walkouts. There needs to be more unionization. Starbucks are starting to unionize all over the place, which is great. I think there should be unions everywhere. And then meanwhile, like you're seeing also, because they want people to work. They're like allowing younger and younger kids to not only work, but there was a thing I saw where like for semi drivers to drive semi trucks, they're going to allow like as young as 18-year-olds to, instead of, I think you had to be 20 something to be able to drive. They're going to allow green drivers, people that have only been driving for a couple years, to drive gigantic machines across the country. Not to mention, there was a green driver, an inexperienced semi-driver, whose brakes failed and was sentenced to 110 years in prison. I think that's been reduced since then, but it's like, he shouldn't be charged with, I know a lot of people died, but he shouldn't be charged with murder because of equipment failure. Anyway, it's ridiculous. Like, it's so blatant to see these businesses kind of manipulate everything to get their way. From cutting the 10-day quarantine down to 5-day, to getting all these kids to start working in jobs they really shouldn't be doing, to forcing like medical staff to work while sick with the virus that is causing this pandemic, thus allowing them to spread this virus to everybody that goes into a hospital. Like, I have zero desire to go to a hospital, to any public area, DMV, because not only are the people around me possibly sick and either vaccinated, unvaccinated, I don't trust majority of people. I do not trust that they are telling the truth or have my best interest in mind. But also the employees that work there have to be spreading it to each other. And it's ridiculous. But let's move on. to some more bad news. It's just always bad news. Another death. This time, stand-up comedian and TV personality Bob Saget passed away while on tour. He was on a comedy tour. I believe he was in Florida when he passed away. But his body was found, and I think it was like a year. It was like on the anniversary of his sister's passing, I believe. I don't know. I haven't heard the cause of his death. But he wasn't that old. He was like 56. And he was just falling in love with comedy. Like, so many of the posts I saw were things from his like Twitter that he posted recently about how he fell in love with comedy again, and it's like he's just so stoked. I never got to see him do comedy. I've heard that he is one of the dirtiest comedians. Like, he's just a dirty comic. Like, he loves the blue humor, but also, from what I've heard from every comedian, that he was just the sweetest guy, the nicest guy. And the times I heard him on podcasts, he was always great. Doug Love's Movies re-released the one time he was a guest on Doug Love's Movies. But for me, Bob Saget was Full House and America's Funniest Home Videos. Full House, obviously, people know. It had kind of a rejuvenation, a re-release with the kind of follow-up to Fuller House, I think, is what the newer one is called. But that was a show that I loved growing up, Full House. And then America's Funniest Home Videos was basically, before any internet was around, before smartphones and before digital cameras, like, the only way to capture video was with a camcorder, a VHS camcorder. I guess you could have done it with film, but the first time consumers could really record things without having to worry about large development costs and things like that, developing film, VHS. And then you could send in your VHS tape of these silly things you found on video. And then Bob Saget would comment on them, do like voiceover stuff. I mean, it's basically what the internet produces primarily. I mean, there's accounts that are dedicated to posting like fail videos and just wacky things that happen. So they're everywhere. Like, America's Got No Talent is one of the, I think it's a Instagram and probably a TikTok account. Kids Getting Hurt. Like, there's all kinds. They don't have necessarily the comical voiceover stuff that Bob Saget used to do, but I loved that show. It was just a show about just everyday people doing, like, silly stuff happening to them, you know? And I loved it. So it's sad. It's sad that he's gone so young, too. And, of course, I believe, as it happens every time now, when a celebrity dies, the anti-vax community spreads the misinformation, the propaganda that they died because they got vaccinated. That's how they honor the death of these people, is to use them in their propaganda, to use them to push their ignorant, delusional message that somehow vaccines are evil. And, you know, listening to Joe Rogan is a sound medical idea. Anyway, R.I.P. Bob Saget. Go hang out with Betty White. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog,
as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. And last but not least, just a fun piece of trivia. I love movies. I talk about movies a lot on this show, review movies, not this particular one, but other episodes. And The Thing, which is a classic horror, John Carpenter, Stephen King, set in like the Arctic. These scientists are suddenly invaded by this weird alien being that like infects people and clones them and turns them into like monsters. It's a great film. But apparently, The Thing, British research stations in Antarctica have made a tradition to watch this movie during their midwinter celebrations every June 21st. So in the time where the Arctic is the most cold, I would imagine is that time, the midwinter. So they're probably getting the least amount of daylight, if at all. It's probably dark for like 22 hours of the day. The coldest it gets, I'm sure, as well. They decide to watch a movie that's set. It'd be like if you're stranded in Death Valley during the hottest months of the summer, deciding to watch Tremors. But probably even worse than that. But yeah, that's kind of that would be the analogous kind of comparison I would have. But kind of a crazy thing. I would definitely do that. I'm the type of person, I think, that would want to watch a movie that is going to be enhanced by set and setting. I think so. Like, in a lot of ways, when I love watching, like, kind of thrilling, suspenseful, intense movies on an edible. A marijuana edible. I'm an adult. Don't take them if you're a child. And don't take them if you're inexperienced, because they could be a wild ride. But I love taking an edible, like while watching a movie like, let's say, Captain Phillips, or maybe like a documentary like Free Solo. Just kind of any intense type of a movie I feel is enhanced when you take an edible. Because the edible is going to make you feel on edge and irritable and scared anyway. So adding in, for instance, watching Free Solo in an IMAX screen and the edibles kicking in, and meanwhile you have Alex Honnold just climbing up a mountain without any ropes and just seeing the amount of air that's between him and the ground that he would have to cut through before splattering if he were to lose his grip. Is just like my hand's getting sweat right now just thinking about it. Definitely a way to enhance it. And I think aside from any kind of outside substance that you could take to do that, watching The Thing in the Antarctic during winter, midwinter celebrations. I want to know what the other celebrations are. I'm sure it's crazy stuff. I'm sure it's just like stuff to just not feel like you're going insane. But yeah, great stuff there. Let's do some shout outs and get out of here, shall we? Shout out to ABC News, shout out to Troy Conrads, and shout out to Slash Film. But most importantly, shout out to you. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.